All right, today we're going to be covering this exercise that's found in the Onshape Learning Center. This is a self-guided lesson, but the instructions are a little bit tricky, so I'm making a video to just go along with this. So to get started, you'll want to find the file that they ask you to download. I'll include it with this video. Once you open it, before you can do anything, you will have to make a copy. So you can click the button to make a copy in order to edit it. Then once you're in here, you can see a lot of work has already been done for us. So we'll get into kind of how to copy this kind of strategy for creating a three-dimensional object out of two views. And we've done a little bit of this in class, creating projected curves and such. So today will just be a continuation of that kind of project. So this is, we're going to try to create, these are just two-dimensional images that have no sketch geometry in them. They're just two-dimensional objects. So those are the sketch pictures. I'm going to go ahead and hide those. And then let's view the sketch guides, which is the next group. So you have a sketch profile placement. And then you have a top view, and then what's called sketch guides. So let me just show you by orbiting what each of these is. So from the top view, you can see this would be the farthest out point, the widest point of the toothbrush, if you're viewing it from the top. And then they have a profile, which you can see kind of the top and bottom most boundary of that three-dimensional object. And then what's running through the center here would be like where the thickest part of the toothbrush would be, and that would correlate with the top view. So what you would be seeing on the top view would be this furthest out point, like the widest part of the toothbrush. Hope that makes sense. So what we need to do is project a curve between this view and this view, which will give us the three-dimensional shape that would actually be a representation of exactly where that edge would be in space. So we're going to get started by finding that tool. We need the projected curve. So here are all the different tools that aren't displayed yet. So my resolution is not large enough to display all these tools. So at some point you'll have to expand the menu to see the additional tools. So here is where projected curve is. I'm going to select that. So the first sketch I'm going to select is the top view outline. Then I need to click the second sketch window there to enable that. Then I'm going to target this line here. And immediately when I do that, you see the projected curve take shape. So it's out in space, the combination of both of those curves. So it is doing what we wanted it to do. That's the first step. All right, go ahead and click that check mark. And then the next thing we're going to view are the profile planes. So somebody did a lot of work and created a plane at 8 different points along this profile. They've created planes that correlate with these construction lines. So we're going to draw on each of those, like if you were to take a knife and cut through the toothbrush at each of these points and then view it from the front. That's the profile we're going to be drawing on each of these planes. So let's start with the first plane. We're going to create a sketch on that plane. So click the sketch button, then choose plane 1 as your sketch plane. I'm going to hide what is not needed right now. I don't need to see I need to see that. I don't need to see that line, I don't think. So let's go ahead and hide that one. And I don't need to see the top. So what I need to see are the sketch guides and the projected curve, which is down here. this curve here. All right, so we're going to create a simple profile, just half. Eventually it will be mirrored on the other side. So to do that, we're going to create a spline. It's going to be a very simple 3-point spline. Since this one starts on this plane, we're just going to attach it here to this point. And then the next one eventually is going to be connected to somewhere on that projected curve, but we're not sure where that is yet. So I'm just going to click out here somewhere and then attach it right here. Press escape to get to be done with the spline. And then the next thing I want to do, and this is just a tip, if I were to make an adjustment at this point, it may force one of these handles on the inside, and then you can't ever get it back on the outside. So before I do anything, I'm just going to purposely, I'm escaped out of all the tools. I'm going to grab the handle and force it up like this, and the other one down, so that they stay on the outside. Now what I want to do is create a pierce relationship between this midpoint of the spline, my second point, and the projected curve. So wherever it is along that projected curve on the plane is going to connect it right there on the projected curve. So now that that's attached. Now for the next parts, I need to create a construction line. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a construction line and click on the end point of the spline and the handle, and then on the same thing on the other handle, create a construction line there. This way I can create a constraint for each of those, and then I'm also going to include a vertical construction line. Make sure it's vertically aligned here off of that midpoint. First thing I'm going to do is change the top and bottom to horizontal constraint. So I have a couple of constraints already here. Here we go. Here's a constraint. I want to click on this construction line to align it horizontally, and the same thing with the other one. And the last thing I need to do is define, actually there's a couple things. I want to define the length of this line here. So I'm going to grab the dimension tool, click on the construction line. This first one is going to be 3.25. All right, and now the next thing I need to do is have this tangent to the vertical construction line. And I'm going to do something on purpose the wrong way. Show you what happens. So if I want to go tangent between the spline, let me zoom in a little bit. So I select the spline and then the vertical construction line. Oh, it actually worked. So sometimes if it's too far over here, it can't do it for some reason. So let me go back one step. If that happens to you, so let me go ahead and see if I drag this way out here, if that will still work. Oh, it still worked. Okay, great. Hopefully it still works for you. If not, one of the workarounds for this, if you get an error, is to go ahead and force this on the other side of this line. So when you go and do a tangent constraint, it doesn't get confused. All right, so that's our first profile. It's completely defined. Everything's black. And now we're going to click the check mark. And to make our work a little bit easier, what we're going to do next is copy this sketch to all of the other planes. So I'm going to go ahead and right click that sketch that I just completed and then choose copy sketch. I'm going to select plane 2, right click it, and then paste it there. Then once it's pasted, it selects it for some reason. I'm not sure why, but you can go ahead and click anywhere to deselect it. Go ahead and select the next plane. Do the same thing, right click, paste sketch into that. Then click to deselect again. Now I'm on plane 4, so on and so forth. just going to go through and do all 8 planes. All right, so you should have, when you're done, 8 sketches. The first one, the original one, and then 7 others that you copied. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off sketch 1 because we're done with that one. Go ahead and reveal sketch 2, which will have a copy. Actually, let's go ahead and hide all of these except for the current one we're going to work with. So I'm hiding 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then reveal just sketch 2. That's the one we're going to focus on. So this sketch has the spline, it has all the construction lines that I need. So all I need to do is pierce it and attach it to certain lines and then define this dimension here. So the first thing I like to do is pierce this point. So to do this you might have to orbit so you can see. So I'm going to grab this point and attach it to this line. So go ahead and find the pierce constraint. Actually, I got to get inside the sketch first. Let's do that. Find the pierce constraint. Click on that point, and then attach it to the projected curve. Then I'm going to go ahead and stay in the pierce constraint and attach the top to the top and the bottom to the bottom line. And then, like I said, the last thing we need to do is define this dimension here. The second one is 7. Simple as that. We've done the second sketch. Click the check mark. You can go ahead and hide that one and then reveal, or just get inside sketch 3. That will make it visible. Same steps. Pierce relationship. Grab that middle point and attach it to the projected curve. Then for this one, we're actually in line with, ooh, my zoom is doing weird things. We're not in line with this part of this spline. There's actually 3 line segments, one in the front, one in the tiny one in the middle, and then the last one. This one actually lines up with this spline, so go ahead and click that. It's attached right there. Now I got to zoom out and attach the bottom, still pierce relationship. And you may need to orbit to make sure you're selecting the correct one. So I'm going to attach it to this line down here. And then the last thing again is to dimension. Actually, it's already dimensioned. I need to change the dimension of this line. This should be 2.75. All right. That one's all defined. Click the check mark. So that was 3, we're on to 4. So you get the idea. All you'll need from this video basically is the dimension for the last part. So let's go ahead and attach it with the pierce relationship to the projected curve, which I believe is that one. Orbit, just to make sure. Attach it to the top. Attach it to the bottom. And then escape out of that tool, double click the dimension and change that. This is 2.6. All right, we're done with this sketch. On to sketch number 5. Same thing. Whoops, I didn't want a midpoint. Want that pierce relationship there, the constraint. Then this dimension, this is number 5, is 4 even. All right, number 6. Same steps. I know it's getting kind of boring, but we're just going to do all of these. All right, for number 6. No, it's 5. 2 more. Check mark on that one. Zoom out if I can. All right, for the 7th one, the dimension is 5.75. Click that check mark. We have one more to do. Find the pierce. All right. The last dimension is 3.4. All right, check mark. All right, so going to go ahead and reveal all of these just to make sure we have all of them. Should have a sketch on each of these. All right. So let's go ahead and orbit just to see what this is going to look like. So we have a lot of geometry. We have a top boundary, which represents the top surface, and a bottom surface. And then using that projected curve, we've created a cross section of each of these sketches. So again, if we would have sliced through the solid at each of these points, that profile is what you would see. So the next thing we need to do, I'm going to go ahead and just organize my work area a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these sketches. So click on the first one, hold the shift key down, and click on the last one. I'm going to right click once they're all selected and add a selection to folder. I get a new folder here. These are going to be profile sketches. So now I can just minimize those if I want to, or expand them if I want to see all of them. Go ahead and minimize them for now. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and create our surface by lofting each of these. And you have to do it in order. So once you start on one end, you need to sequentially go through and select all the profiles in order. You can't just willy-nilly go all over the place. So I'm going to go ahead and, it's easier if I just go ahead and click on each sketch as we go through. So click on the loft option. Let me go ahead and do that again. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on each of these sequentially. 1, 2. As you click on each one, you can see a surface is being created. It's just basically stitching them all together in order from one profile to the next. So the next thing we need to do is, you could see, even though this is a nice shape, it's not matching the side view profile. Especially you can see that right here. There's a big gap, and there's gaps everywhere actually. Same thing with this side view. You can see a little gap there. Little gap there. So in order to do that, to make this stretch it out to match exactly that, we need to add the guides So I'm going to go ahead and select the option for a guide. So the first two guides are really easy because they are one complete line segment. So go ahead and select the bottom profile. And then we can select the projected curve. That again is all one solid profile. So it should be, now that the gap is gone from that view, but we still have this profile here. This is made up of three different line segments. One here, a little tiny one there, and then this one. So I'm going to click on the first one, and it's going to cause an issue because that line segment doesn't stretch across the whole thing. So I need to add to that last one the other two line segments. So I'm going to go ahead and expand it. I can see I have one edge. I'm going to click on that in order to add more edges. So I need to add this little tiny one and then that last segment there to complete that entire, the whole line there. So now this is complete. So we're done with half of our toothbrush. You can go ahead and click on the check mark. The next thing we're going to do is mirror it on the other side. So from this menu, you're not in any sketches or anything. We're going to select the mirror tool. First thing it wants is the entities to mirror. So you're going to click on the surface that you just created. Then you'll need to select the mirror plane. So click on that box. And we can expose our planes by clicking on the P key and figure out which plane that we need to use by just orbiting. So we can use the right plane. That is the one that will eventually divide the two halves. If I can zoom out enough here. So here's the right plane. So we want to mirror it on the other side of this plane. So go ahead and click on that. And just like that, you get two halves. That's successful. Go ahead and click the check mark. And before this can become a solid, we have two open ends. One on the front, or the top, or the bottom, whatever you want to consider that on this toothbrush. So we're going to use a specific tool to fill this in. So let me see if it's visible here from where I'm viewing right now. Nope, it is not. Just need to find the additional tools here. Oh, maybe it is. Here it is. I'm going to use the fill tool. So you may have to click around. So this is the offset surface tool. So you have to click the arrow next to that to find this tool. So if you hover over it, it says create or add to a surface by selecting a set of curves or edges to form a closed boundary. So we have a closed boundary. That's all of these lines together. And one other thing that you'll want to do is, if you go to try to select this line here, and then you go ahead and click these two lines here. Oops, didn't mean to click that last one. All right, it creates a patch to fill it, but it's not quite right. So the next step is to change the continuity to tangency. Let me just show you what that does. So basically it curves the surface out so that each edge of the surface, meets tangent. So it's a smooth transition between the surfaces that we created and this new fill surface that we're using to patch up the opening here. But you can see if you orbit, the side that I selected first is not smooth. Kind of bends out away, then it comes back in. So that first thing, I'm going to go ahead and just get out of this. Just undo that. first thing I need to do is, that first line that I clicked on was actually the sketch geometry from sketch 1. So instead of using the edge of the surface that I created, it used the sketch, what is that called? Spline. So you don't get the same results. So I'm going to go ahead and hide sketch 1 because that's just going to mess things up. Go through those steps again. Go ahead and find that fill tool. This time when you select the edges, you'll see there's like 2 halves to each side. So there's actually 4 different edges that we're selecting. And then change all of them to tangency. So again, it forces that surface to intersect in a tangent manner. Just a nice smooth transition. So that's looking great. So the next thing we need to do, go ahead and click the check mark to accept that one. We need to go ahead and do the same process to the other end of the toothbrush here. Go ahead and hide. You can hide all the sketches if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and hide sketch 8 for sure. Go ahead and use that fill tool again. You're going to select the edges of this surface. When you completely enclose that area, it does create a surface, but it's just flat. It's just a flat surface there. Can't hardly see it. So we're going to force it out tangent. Alright, click the check mark. And if you want to, you can just clean up your work area. If you want to hide all your sketches so you can view everything. Hide your curves if you want to. So since everything is all enclosed, it went ahead and created a solid part, which is what our goal was. So this now has a volume. So this, go ahead and hide the plane so you can see that. This concludes this exercise.